The biggest thing that always troubled me was my imagination. You know, I grew up poor, but I was always imagining stuff. You know, my mama, once a month, would buy a travel magazine that my father used to be so pissed off. She said, Slick, we ain't got no money to take this boy nowhere. But if he can look in these magazines, maybe one day it'll cause him to want to travel. My mama had enough sense to plant that seed in me. When they was living, they told me one time, they was sitting up watching TV. My daddy looked at my mama and said, can you believe that this little boy we had on TV? I used to send my daddy $5,000 a week. When I got into Kings of Comedy, my father was still living. I showed my daddy one time how much money I made. He said, boy, it take me 4 years to make this kind of money. I always wanted God to just lift me up so before my mom and them left this world, I could give them something. I bought them everything, man, houses, cars. I tried. I'm 62 years old. I'm still hoping that they in heaven watching me and they see me turn into somebody. It was in my imagination to take care of them. Everything that's in your imagination, God gonna make it come true for you. God make dreams come true. He take poor kids and put them all over TV. If God can do that for me, explain to me how he can't do it for you. Don't ever give up and keep believing, because God is real. Don't you listen to nobody telling you God ain't real. God is more real than anybody I know. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't even be here today. All faith is, really, the substance of it is just what you hope for. It's just real hard hoping. You remember when you was little and you said, I hope I get a bike for Christmas? And you went out there one year and the bike was under the tree? At one point in time, the older you get, this got to start clicking in. That if you hope hard enough, one day you ought to get smart and turn all that hoping into belief. Faith is a belief in things that you cannot see. When you ain't see no way you was gonna get that bike, he got you one, didn't he? That's because God was turning your hopes into faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for.
They asked Muhammad Ali, how did you know you could dominate boxing? He said, I got here when I was running 5 o'clock in the morning. I visualized myself speaking, celebrating my wins, and I got here long before I danced under the lights. And I held that vision, and I took action.
Remember I told you that imagination is everything? Now let me tell you the problem with your imagination. You tell it to the wrong people. See, you gotta be careful when you share your imagination with small-minded people.
We all have pictures that we see in our mind. God created us as visual beings. Sometimes we're not even thinking about it, and a negative imagination will come. We'll see our business going down, or us losing our health. There's no truth to it. But if you let that play, you'll go through the day worried. Dwelling on these negative images will cause you to live in fear. It's all an imagination. It's just something you're seeing in your mind. It's one thing to have something to deal with that's actually happening. But too often, we're letting these wrong imaginations of what might happen, what might fall apart, to steal our joy. The good news is you control your imagination. Just because that negative image comes doesn't mean you have to tune in. And the scripture tells us to cast down these wrong imaginations. When my mother was fighting terminal cancer, in the middle of the night, she would see herself being buried in a new pink dress that she had never worn. She wasn't thinking about it. She was trying to stay in faith. But these negative imaginations will come, especially when we're in difficult times. If my mother would have pulled up a chair and watched that movie night after night of her being buried in that pink dress, she would have become depressed, defeated, and might not be here today. Don't take the bait. That is not predicting your future. That is a wrong imagination that you need to cast down. Quit losing sleep over something that's just in your mind. Don't fall into that trap. Guard your mind. I talked to a man that was very concerned about his health. All through his 30s and 40s, he was so stressed, so fearful. He saw himself going downhill. When he made it to his 47th birthday, he was so happy. He made it past his father's. He was still strong and healthy. Thoughts said, don't get too happy. Those images kept coming. Him going downhill, him losing his health. But he made it past 51. He was 93 years old, looked like he was 70. Strong, healthy, joyful. He said, Joel, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have lived all those years worried, afraid that my health wasn't going to last. Are you going to look back years from now and have to say, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't spend all that time discouraged over what I thought was going to happen? Some of the things the enemy is showing you, it looks very real, but it's all made up. It is not going to happen. Quit believing those lies. Instead of watching that picture of you struggling, business going down, cast down that imagination. Start seeing yourself prosperous, coming out of debt, having an abundance so you can be a blessing to others. Use your imagination for the right purposes to see what God says about you. Start seeing yourself strong, living a full, blessed life. Or maybe you've gone through a disappointment. Life hasn't turned out the way you had. Planned, those images will come up. But God says He will give you beauty for those ashes, that He will take what was meant for your harm and use it to your advantage. See, the enemy will show you the ashes. What he won't show you is the beauty that's coming. He'll show you that it's all downhill from here. What he won't show you is the double that's coming. Now do your part. Protect your imagination. When those images come that show you going downhill, they are not from God and they are not a reality. The mistake many people make is they only watch one channel. You need to get cable in your mind. When I'm watching something I don't like, I don't sit there and endure it. I simply change the channel. I'm smart enough to say, no thanks, I'm not watching that channel. I don't watch the things are going downhill channel. I stay on the victory channel, the more than enough channel, the overcoming channel. In your mind, quit watching things that are depressing you, causing you to live in fear, not pursue your dreams. You control what plays in your mind. There was a young lady that came down for prayer. She and her husband wanted to have a baby. She'd gone through all the fertility treatments. She said, Joel, I've been worried since I was in my early teens that I wouldn't be able to have a baby. Other family members have struggled with infertility. I always knew this was going to happen to me. Many times, the enemy doesn't have to put negative images in our mind. We're creating them with our own thoughts. Cast down that imagination. She switched off that station of all of her relatives, disappointed. She started seeing her and her husband playing with it. this baby. 3 years later, she came back with a beautiful baby girl. Medically speaking, she wasn't supposed to have a child, but God has the final say. Are negative pictures keeping you from your dreams? The scripture tells us in Timothy to have a disciplined mind. Your mind will naturally gravitate toward the negative. Don't be surprised if in your imagination you start seeing the creditors coming, you see the doors closing. If you're not disciplined, you'll go around worried, stressed out. Change the channel. You can create new pictures in your mind. Be disciplined in your thought life. When you're watching negative imaginations, that's taking your strength, making you weaker. If you'll use your imagination the right way, it will help you stay hopeful and to believe that God can turn it around.